Introducing the starting five for your Illini Drive.
Joey Gelman, host, Chicago, Illinois.
Brett Lerner, co-host, Buffalo Grove, Illinois.
Dan Collins, co-host, Chicago, Illinois.
Kevin McCarthy, social media man, Geneva, Illinois.
Jeff Omer, producer, Naperville, Illinois.
Welcome into Illini Drive, your home on the way home for Illini Sports every Monday at 6. I'm Joey Gilman alongside Jeff Omer, Dan Collins, and Kevin McCarthy. We have a whole stacked house today because this is a special one for us. We started the show with heavy hearts. As we reported on Saturday, our co-host and friend, Brett Lerner, passed away Friday night in a car accident. At least for me, it's tough looking to my left here and realizing Brett won't be sitting next to me on the show anymore. You know, you think it's just a vacation or he's off for the week, and it kind of comes to a little bit of a more finality today, at least. A lot of us just got back from the funeral this afternoon, and was just an incredible service, beautifully spoken by members of his family and friends. The room was packed to the brim. I mean, if we're talking about sellouts, as we do always on this show, for Brett today truly was standing room only in that service today, and it's just a really tough day for all of us here. And I think it would only do us good to kind of talk everything through and share our best moments and memories of Brett, and to do a sports radio show, because that's exactly what he would be doing right now and what he would be want to doing. As someone mentioned at the service today, there's an anchor chair waiting for him upstairs, and so hopefully he's sitting there listening and sharing some words of wisdom with all those as well. And I guess just starting out with me, and we're going to go around round table here with thoughts, and just to keep everyone informed, Torrance Sorrell, former producer of the show, is in town. He's going to share some thoughts with us. Stephen Cohen, Masagi Sugimoto, Jordan Wilson, all here to obviously pay their respects for Brett and also talk a little bit of sports, because that's, I think, what we need to do as well towards the end of the show. But for me, working with Brett, I met him through Big Ten Student U. We did a couple of games together, basketball and volleyball, and he is the volleyball guru. Everyone says he is. And it's just, it was amazing, his cadences and his ability to really do what he did and do what he loved. And from a perspective from me, I was always jealous of that, just of how can he be that good? What does it take to get that good? And I think he showed everyone just what it is to be a broadcast journalist, to be in this industry, and just to be an all-around unbelievable, hardworking and caring person. And I think we all have seen that and respected that, and it's tough to think about that was cut short. And we're all aspiring to do exactly what he wanted to do, and it's just weird to think that one of our own just got that dream taken away. And so for me, it's just a tough one, but I know we're all going to do him justice here as best we can. You can also tweet at us your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you guys. Obviously, we're not the only ones touched by Brett. You guys are as well. At Illini Drive, at DI_sports is the Twitter handles. Facebook, you can reach out to us as well as Illini Drive or our personal accounts. We're going to go around the table here and just kind of throw some things out, just to kind of share our best thoughts and what Brett meant to us.
Wow, you did a great, fearless leader. You know, I think, at least I like to believe, that when I get through this, I'm going to be strong, and this is how I'm going to remain for the rest of the show. I mean, deep down inside, I'm crumbled, but the only way I could do this show is like a champion. So, you know, part of my social media tribute on Facebook to Brett was saying that one of the best parts about sitting here is I get to look around the table and I'm wowed. I'm astonished at just like the work that my peers could do. And, excuse me, it's incredible. And Brett was all of that. I got to sit across from the table, and he would rock back and forth in whatever that thing is that we call a chair with like two legs and a weird back and a couple strings. And I would tell him, brother, will you stop it because you're going to fall? And he would be as confident as ever and say, Dan, shut up. I've been sitting like this since I was a kid in these goofy chairs. And I'd say, all right. And I let him do his thing, and he'd man his mic, and he did a fantastic job. And it's fitting that Torrance is also here in the studio with us as well, as you mentioned, because you're one of the three men that hired us, that told me and Brett, and you gave us this job. And one of the best emails I ever got in my life was, hey, you got selected to do Illini Drive. Host, Joey Gelman. Social media man, Kevin McCarthy. Brett Lerner, Dan Collins. And I always looked at that email continuously. I loved it. I made it in a sense. And the first few shows we got to do together were awesome. And for the most part, I mean, I seen Brett at other sporting events that we cover, for our respective venues. And we would chit-chat, shoot the breeze, and those are fun conversations. And I had a class with him. But the most I known him was in this studio and preparing. And he was one of the first guys that came in. I was here technically first because I was editing stories. But in terms of, I don't want to call you out, Jeff, he'd beat you to it sometimes, producer man. He'd come in first, and he was the most prepared. He'd come in first, and he'd just sit down. I remember the first time I seen him walk in, bro, you're like almost an hour early. And he's like, yeah, I'm like, you're going to prepare? He's like, well, I already know what I'm going to do, but sure, you could call it preparation. And, he kind of just wanted to shoot the breeze with us a little bit. And I'll always cherish those times, and he will be missed. And like I said, I learned a lot from him, and we're going to do this show, and I hope we're going to rock. And we'll never hear the words, all right, boys, let's do a radio show again. But unless it's uttered through us, and at least not from him again, and I'm really going to miss that. And I'm sure maybe within this little speech I'm doing right now, because I'm ad-libbing it, and it's the only way I could do it, because if I prepared something and read it, who knows what would have happened. You would have heard even more of a crackling voice. So for whatever you're hearing right now, I'm sorry. But, yeah, that's what I have to say on that matter. And I hope that no matter what we do, from now on, I mean, that's one more thing. Let me say this. I mean, when I said about landing this gig with all you guys, and it's a fun show, and we love doing it, and whether I have host, co-host, only this show in my life, or 100 more, I'll never forget my partner, Brett Lerner.
Thanks, brother. Unlike you, Dan, is this mic not good enough? Why don't I switch over? Unlike you, Dan, I decided that I wrote something up just because I think that's easier for me. So, all right, boys, let's do a radio show. Those words were always good for a quick chuckle every Monday at about 5:55. But I never had any idea how much those would mean to me one day. And that one day has come, and it came Saturday morning. And now I can only wish I could hear you say those words one more time, Brett. You were pretty awesome. And the best lesson that you taught me was to find what you love and chase after it with everything you've got, because that's what you did. You never stopped doing what you loved, whether it was with WCIA or at ESPN or right here with us on Illini Drive. Life's pretty short, and it was way too short for you. So you better spend your time doing what you love. That's what Brett taught me. Be passionate, love what you do, chase after your dreams, and shoot for the stars. And for Brett, the stars were something like SportsCenter or Monday Night Football. And I have no doubt that Brett would have achieved whatever he wanted because he wouldn't have let himself fail. Brett was driven and determined, while at the same time he was humble and funny. Quick jokes and clever jabs were always in store when Brett was behind the mic. I didn't know Brett much outside of the studio and the classroom, but he never failed to put a smile on my face in Juror 311 every Tuesday and Thursday, or in the pre-show meetings every Monday, or when we disagreed about Illini play calling on the air. Brett, I thank you for your passion and love for sports, for journalism, and for this show. We're going to miss that Brett smile. We're going to miss those Brett comments. We're going to miss Brett for Brett, because Brett was pretty awesome. And if I may, gentlemen, I'd like to change those 7 words that Brett said at the beginning of each show. I just want to add a couple of little words. All right, boys, excuse me. Let's do a radio show for Brett. Each show from here on out is for you. I'll miss you, man. Thank you for being you, because Brett was pretty awesome. So, all right, boys, let's do a radio show for Brett.
Thank you for those words, Kevin. I'll try to match what you wrote there, but that was really touching. Like Kevin, I wrote a little something for Brett and for everybody just to listen to, so I'll start here. When I woke up to the shocking news about Brett on Saturday, I was in absolute disbelief. I called my parents, I told my friends. I just could not wrap my head around the fact that someone my age, someone I worked with and became friends with during my time here at Illinois, died. Brett and I first met each other during our freshman year, nearly 2 years ago when we covered men's tennis for the Daily Illini. He was the print guy, I was the on-air. We did tons of work together freshman year, going to practices, matches, recording podcasts. We were two freshmen totally new to the demands of working for a student newspaper, but we are helping each other out through the processes one step at a time. That time has really flown by since then, as I'm already a junior here at the U of I. But looking back, Brett was always a familiar face that I'd see on a daily basis ever since freshman year. Whether in class, at an athletic event, or at one of those social gatherings where only 19-year-old people or older can go. Brett was always someone who I was able to realize and look up to as a big role model in my life and at my experiences here at the university. And he most certainly cemented my confidence in pursuing sports journalism as a profession. I looked up to Brett as a fellow journalist just because he was so darn good, and I knew it right off the bat. I also looked up to him because he was always so genuine and something that was so easy to click with. I may not have known Brett for as long as others, but I sure knew that he was something that I could trust and depend on. We weren't the best of friends, but we shared a special relationship and connection that started in journalism. And that is something I will never forget. Brett, you'll be missed by so many. I'll especially miss being able to follow all of your work on your path to professionalism. Your spirit, passion, and unique talent is something I'll carry with me and remember for the rest of my life. In your 2.5 years here, you definitely put your stamp on this university, on the broadcast program, and on all of us here. We will miss you, man, and it won't be easy to move on without you. Thank you for blessing my time here with your warm and friendly presence and for teaching me all that you did in such a short amount of time.
Jump to Torrance Sorrell here.
Okay. The mic on now. Okay, cool. So I love the part in which you said the 19 years older part. But in all seriousness, though, man, I don't know him obviously as good as you guys, the young guys here, being one of the old heads coming back. But like me and Daniel was talking about before the show, when me, Steve, and Sam hired you guys, it was a perfect match, made in heaven. Like, when you guys first came in during the interviews, like, we automatically seen that spark, that chemistry, and that was something that I wanted to keep on the show. You guys had that perfect balance together, kind of like what Steve and Sam had. You have the laid back person who hit you with cold hard facts. Then you have the other guy who's the goofy person out of the group, and I'm looking at him right now, the goofy person out of the group. And Brett was just an absolute professional. One thing, just being older, seeing someone that young, he was an instant 5-star recruit from when he was hired. Obviously, he wasn't on my side of things as an on-air person. He was on print, but I always respected the work he did on the other side of the table. And he also done things as far as, doing stuff with Jeff, with on-air work, too. That was always stuff that I was really appreciative of. So, I'll just try to keep it short and sweet because I know a couple guys have more things to say. But for what I remember, man, he's just an absolute professional, a humble dude, and rest easy up there, brother.
So yeah, this is Masaki Sugimoto. I had the fortune of covering women's basketball with Brett last year, along with doing quite a few Student U broadcasts with him. And I didn't really prepare much today because whenever we would do the Student U broadcast, he'd be on play-by-play. I'd be on color a good amount of the time. And it'd be a lot of me coming a little unprepared, ad-libbing a little bit. And I just remember, whether it was baseball or basketball, Brett had pages of notes, just game notes from both teams. And I think he always had at least one note on every single player, on the teams, whether it's, someone who had not seen time during that season and just might have. He always was just that prepared. And it was just always something I remembered. And it almost seemed really easy to him, too, because we did have a class together, which is going to be a little rough to go to tomorrow. But he always just seemed to do it all so naturally. It was audio journalism. And, if the semester ended today, he'd have 100% in that class because his work was always great, and sometimes he wouldn't know it either. He'd say, how'd I get 100 on that? And I was like, well, let me listen to it. It wasn't really 100, and he deserved the grade. So I just want to say that, not just us. He wasn't just a DI guy and a Illini Drive guy. Always remember him for the work he did at WCIA, ESPNCU. Them, his family, we're all grieving right now. But, to anyone who's fortunate enough to be able to follow their dreams, do what they want, whether it be going to school, getting a certain job, just know that some people aren't fortunate enough to, realize their dream. And I knew that Brett was someone who was gonna see. He was gonna see. Heck, he was gonna see my dream. He was gonna be in an anchor chair. He was gonna do, what I always wanted to do. And I always envied that. And it's a shame that we had to see it cut pretty short. Rest in peace, Brett.
We'll jump here. Stephen Cohen's going to jump on with us. He's a reporter for us now, and was a Stevenson Patriot with Brett Lerner and really followed his path for broadcast journalism, so we wanted to make sure he got in here. He probably knows Brett the best out of all of us in here to just share some thoughts.
Yeah, so it was December 21st, 2012, the day the world was supposed to end, and the apocalypse and all that good stuff. And I was going to the Stevenson basketball game, and I was just going as a fan, and I was involved in the radio station in high school. And then Brett was announcing the game because he announced all the basketball and football games there for WAS, the Stevenson Broadcast Network. And he just motions me over, like he waves at me and tells me to come over in there. And I never had any experience doing anything with sports broadcasting at all. And he just tells me, start taking stats during the game and stuff. And I start taking stats. He really liked what I did. And at the end of the year, he chooses me of all the people to be the station manager, to be the president of the radio club. And then after that, I just kept doing stats for all the basketball games, and I kept following his footsteps. And then eventually my junior and senior years, I got to announce all the basketball games, be the play-by-play guy, the guy that succeeded him, and followed him in that. And then we made it to state in Peoria 3 straight years. He went the first time with Jalen Brunson, who didn't go UI, which is sad. But then we went both years, and both times I posted on Facebook, like watching the Stevenson Broadcast Network online on High School Cube. And bro was the first person to comment each time. He always said, I can't wait to watch. Good luck. Go kill it out there. He messaged me after the games and stuff and said we did an amazing job, and that he wishes that this past year in 2015, we finally were able to beat Normal Community High School and win the state championship. And he messages me on Facebook. He's like, wow, that was incredible. The call at the end and stuff was amazing. And then just last week, I went home in Buffalo Grove for the weekend just because I wanted to. And I jump on the broadcast because we had a football game, and I get on, and I'm just saying, like, what I'm doing now at U of I. And I'm like, I'm following the line of, like, the greatest Stevenson broadcaster of all time, Brett Lerner. And, like, I say it's 1 week before he passes away. And it's just, it was, like, I never got to see him here in Illinois, and I regret that now because, like, without him, I wouldn't be doing anything with sports reporting or broadcasting today.
Yeah, we're special show here today. We're starting at 7 o'clock, a little different than usual, but we wanted to make sure we honored our friend and co-host Brett Lerner again. Passed away Friday in a car accident. We're doing a little bit of a round table here, getting a couple people's thoughts and just sharing their best memories. If you want to interact as well, I know he just didn't, have fun with us. He had fun with you guys as well. At Illini Drive, at DI_sports. Jump over here to Jordan Wilson.
When it comes to Brett Lerner, I have some memories that really stand out in my head. One of them's back when he got hired here in the spring. I was an assistant editor still at that time with former sports editor Elliot Sill. He brought me into the room when we interviewed with him, and I remember sitting there talking, hearing kind of his passionate talk, the way he was, describing, trying to sell himself to us, get us to hire him. And it was what you hear from a lot of students. And when you sit there, you kind of look and go, okay, I mean, does he mean it, or does he really just want to get the job here? And then, but with Brett, immediately once he came in, you saw that it wasn't fake. It was all genuine. every time he set out to do work, he did it with everything he had. He quickly took over the men's tennis beat, which was my former beat, which I coveted, I loved. So I was extra picky about who took it over. And I remember he came to me and asked for advice on how to do the story. Different stories throughout the beat, but one of them I remember after my time as assistant, I remember I was laying around my apartment and my phone starts ringing, number I don't have, and I answer and he's like, "Hey." And I was like, "Hey, who's this?" And he's just like, "It's Brett. How's it going?" I'm like, "Good. What's up, man?" And he was just like, "Oh, I just wanted to, I'm doing a few stories from men's tennis. I just wanted to talk." And we talked for an hour about these men's tennis stories because he just cared about covering the beat. And something like that, from that point on, within just a couple weeks, you just knew that Brett was that way. Another memory that really stands out with him is last year, as a couple people have already mentioned, when we were doing the auditions for Illini Drive. I was one of the people that tried out. I had been standing in last year a little bit, and I remember when the email went out, told who was going to be on the staff, I remember looking it over, looking at all the names and going, yeah, these people are all better at this type of stuff than I am, especially Brett. I remember seeing Brett's name on there and going, absolutely. We interviewed together, and I remember thinking, he's got this chair. It's his, he deserves it, and he will do a good job with it, as he did all the way up until his last time in the chair. The one thing I think I'll always regret is I don't remember what my last memory of Brett was. It's probably a conversation we had in Greg Hall, passing through the DI, maybe out at one of the social events. My last actual memory of Brett outside of this was, Saturday morning. I woke up and rolled over, as I usually do, and looked at my phone, and first thing on top of my Facebook news feed is someone saying, really sad to hear about my friend Brett. And it was someone that I didn't know knew Brett, so I read it and immediately thought, please don't be Brett Lerner. Because that kid had so much passion, so much promise. He was going places. He was, I can't even really put it into words. It's hard, especially coming from people that are his friends, but as objectively as I can be, having practiced at it, being a reporter, Brett was going places. He was going, as we said, he was going for his dream jobs. His dream jobs were as good as his. So he'll be missed. And I don't know. I'll miss him more than I thought I would.
I think let's take a quick break here is what we're going to do. We're going to continue our discussion here just of how unbelievable a person, journalist, and friend Brett Lerner was to all of us here. We still have a bunch of people in the studio, so we get to hear from them again. And then we only be fitting towards the end of the show that we do talk some sports because Brett's listening. He's going to be sick of us talking about him and wants us to talk sports.
Jets, Yankees.
There you go. So I think we'll take a quick break here. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to Illini Drive on WPGU at 107.1 FM.
I hate Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey was annoying with this whole...
The Dark Knights?
He was just annoying with this whole inning thing. Like, dude, just step up and, be a teammate and let your agent handle the stuff that makes you look bad.
Welcome back to Illini Drive, your home on the way home for Illini sports every Monday. We're at 7 today, usually 6. Pushed it back today as we wanted to make sure we all got back in time to do a show to honor our friend Brett Lerner, again, passed away Friday in a car accident taken from us way too soon. The first part of the show here, we kind of went around and shared our thoughts, and we're going to continue to do that throughout the show and then get to some sports talk. I know Sam Sherman, one of the former hosts here, is going to call in. He was with us earlier today at the services just to kind of share some thoughts about Brett. And then we'll move on from there, bring a couple people in and around the show. And I guess that song right there that just kind of played us back, Only the Good Die Young, is very fitting for this tough day. And I know last night I was getting in my car, coming back home, just to kind of get all my thoughts together before we left this morning. And I turn on my car, and that's the song that plays. And I just look up, I go, come on, Brett, you're really just playing with me right now. And it just truly speaks to what this scenario is. And there's no good explanation for it. I mean, it's the mystery of life, as many people alluded to all day today. It just sucks. It's really difficult because he's a guy that you knew, as everyone's mentioned, was going places, was going to be that guy. I mean, I know, like, when I would be home and my alarm would go off in the morning to ESPN radio, you expect the national coverage, no one cares. Like, wait a minute, that's Brett on the radio, and he doesn't just sit here with us. He does everything in and around the area. And it's just we're missing a big thing here. There's a big hole in this chair next to me, and I mean that's the first thing I said was it's just going to be weird that you're not going to be sitting there. And at the services today, one of the biggest things that really stood out to me, and we talked about on the car ride home, was they mentioned everything that you could imagine about the unbelievable character and charisma and drive that Brett had. But the first thing mentioned was thanking the sports journalism, whether that's people who came down, whether that's people that still work here, work closely with Brett. And that was just so shocking to me because I know we love what we do and we do it with a purpose, with a passion, but you don't really know how much it affects people. And so for that to be one of the first things, and especially the first thing they said was Illini Drive co-host.
And there went the tears.
Yeah, that was the first title they gave. And it's like, wow, what we are actually doing matters, one, to other people, but two, how much it meant to him. That's what was said. And to us, it's just, it's family. And it's just, it's brutal to sit here and talk about something that you just don't want to think is real. And so I think we all had the opportunity to kind of pay our last respects over this weekend and today. But just to hear that Illini Drive mentioned that early in the speeches just shows how much it meant to him, how much of a family we are, and just how much we're really going to miss Brett going forward here. We're all going to keep talking about this. I'm going to jump to the phone here. We have Sam Sherman on the line. He was at the services today. And, buddy, I know we want to talk about better things when you call in, but I guess we will start out here with your thoughts on Brett.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having me on. Obviously, hopefully going forward, it'll be under better circumstances. Obviously, as you guys have said, obviously it's been a really tough and in many ways sort of really unbelievable, obviously in the negative end of the last few days. Just what I can say is, I was able, obviously Steve Bourbon and I last year had the opportunity to, interview people for Illini Drive to host it this year, and to you guys, obviously we interviewed a lot of you guys and Brett as well, and just from, I know a lot of people will occasionally when tragedy happens, people say how they remember people and how you always wonder, like, how often, how true are those like ways that people remember people. And I can say for sure that just, from being at the service today and just from what I've seen people say, it's almost like it reaffirms what I felt about Brett. And this was just a kid who was as genuine as anyone that I knew. Was just kind, and that's just aside from the fact that I think he was an absolutely just a supreme talent. I think he was really, really. I think he had that kind of combination that you so rarely see of. Not only did he kind of have that it factor, I guess, whatever that it is, you just kind of knew it around him, and I know you guys knew that. But he also had the drive to really succeed, and he really tried to. I know he involved himself in as many things as he could to try and chase those dreams. And I really believe he, with all my heart, I believe he would have absolutely succeeded. And Joey, I appreciate what you were saying before, kind of what they said earlier about. It was a little bit interesting this year that it was first brought up about Illini Drive, and thinking, as a co-host on Illini Drive and that thing. And I think you're right about just the fact that it is sometimes, we're on there talking about, I know this just from being on it last year, and I know you guys with just talking about sports and all that kind of stuff, but we forget sometimes that this, like you said, Joey, it really is a family, and the whole, whether you want to take it out to the, with Illini Drive and then just sports journalism and then just the Daily Illini in general. I mean, that's a whole family, and I think that as horrible as really the last few days have been, I think that what you see is a lot of people kind of coming together and realizing that when we're writing or we're talking or whatever it may be, and for Illini media, Daily Illini, all that kind of stuff, that it's bigger than us. It's sort of just like a family, and it's sort of what it means to people is more than I think any of us could really ever know.
We're talking with Sam Sherman, your former co-host of Illini Drive. Joey going alongside Jeff Omer, Dan Collins, and Kevin McCarthy on Illini Drive here, remembering our friend and colleague Brett Lerner. And I guess, Sam, for you, obviously working with him through the DI is big, and also you did some student U with him, and we've all seen him in this setting, but how much different was it just seeing his prowess, his ability at those student U broadcasts in a way that he just kind of, at least when I worked him, really just commanded those games, those broadcasts, and showed you just how good he was and why he was that talent that everyone knew he was and should have been, and just cut short this weekend.
Yeah, I think with the student U broadcast, I got a quick story if you've got time.
Oh yeah, we do.
Just about he and I did. I actually the first Illinois basketball game that I called, I did with Brett, and that was I think it was McKendree. It was a couple of years ago. McKendree. I'm not sure where that school is, but it was one of those. I think it was like the first exhibition game a couple of years ago, and so we were calling the game, and first half went pretty well, and then we go kind of to the press room, and I think where you guys know where like the popcorn is at State Farm Center. So we were in there, and we were talking to actually and another former Illini Drive host we were talking with Jamal Collier, and we were just kind of having a good conversation with him, and then all of a sudden I think Jamal said something like, "Hey, I think you guys should get back," and we sort of just lost track of time, but we thought we'd be fine in terms of just walking back and getting back on time. So anyway, we leave that area, and we're walking through kind of the concourse area of the arena, and all of a sudden we hear that that like the second half starting, and all of a sudden we get into a panic because we realize that as the announcers of the game, we probably should be down on the court at this point, calling the game again. So we sprint down the steps, get back in our seats, and kind of pick up the broadcast like nothing happened. But at the same time, we're getting screamed at from the producers in our ear because they weren't happy that we were, and we shouldn't have been late, obviously, but it happened. Mistakes happen, and what really stood out to me was actually the second half of that broadcast was really strong, and the reason for that was because of Brett. When we got back, this was I believe he would have been a freshman at this time. This is someone who, I know he had experience calling games in high school and everything, but for him to be in this situation where we're getting producers screaming in there and all this kind of stuff, and even I'm, a little frazzled by the whole thing. And Brett kind of just picked it up, and he was just, his professionalism was probably what stood out to me the most. For me, it was just kind of a fun thing to be doing. For him, that's what he wanted to do in his career, and he really just took what was sort of a stressful situation of showing up late to the second half, and he really carried the rest of that broadcast and made it really, really good because he just didn't let it. He was a professional. That's really and to be at that age and at the just to show that kind of professionalism, to show that kind of ability is why I genuinely believe that he would have had incredible success in this industry, and obviously we all know how talented he was, but again, like what I said earlier, is just, I think that there's talented people, but then to also be as really genuine, and I know you guys know, just a kind person, and for I think sometimes you got talented people who have egos or all that kind of stuff, and I at least in my experience with him, I really didn't get that sense. I think he was talented, but he also had the sense of of just caring and kindness and just a real person. And I think, that's why I'm going to miss him, just because of that combination of course, the talent, but also just one of the better people that you'll meet, certainly in this industry and just in general. And of course, and then just at the services today, hearing people sort of talk about him and just seeing people around, and you're realizing, this person that we sort of knew for the ways that we knew him, knew all these other people and touched all these other people, and kind of just brings it all together. And again, as horrible as these days have been, it has been just sort of interesting to see the Illini Drive and Daily Illini and all this kind of stuff, this journalism family come together and sort of all come together and support each other and mourn the loss of Brett, who I know that we're gonna really miss.
Sam, we really appreciate the time. Thanks for jumping on with us. We look forward to talking to you again in a much better scenario, but we really appreciate your thoughts on Brett.
Thanks, guys.
That's Sam Sherman, former co-host of Illini Drive, giving us his thoughts on Brett Lerner. Again, Brett passed away Friday in a car accident, and this show today and throughout the rest of the year will for sure be dedicated to him.
Impact and family, two biggest words there. I mean, obviously, at least from what I could speak for in this studio, he was an impact to our broadcasting family, the Illini Drive family. And seeing Steve and Sam there today at the services, and there were so many people. There was about 700, I believe it was roughly. We got kind of a rough estimate perhaps. And so we didn't necessarily get the chance to go over there and talk to them, but, just hearing Sam's voice, it just adds a little bit more to the comfort, because it's another Illini Drive family member. And, I'm sure that's the kind of impact he also had with his family/partners in Student U, whether he was doing play-by-play and, his color analyst and his sideline reporter. I'm sure they as well had that family bond relationship with him, and at WCAA or at ESPN-CU. And, that's what it is here. And family's that's not the first time we've thrown that word around here. I mean, Joe, you come in every time and say it, and I've kind of stolen it from you because that's how it feels. And even last time, I want to say it was the last show, I made it a point to go around the table. I don't know if you gentlemen remember, and do the fist pump at the end of the show. I made sure I got everybody. Jeff, I didn't miss you, even though you're over here hiding in the producing section. But I found you, and it's because I felt we were growing, as a team, as a family. And that's what Brett always said. He said it after every show. He's like, we're really getting better and better after every one. And really, when he said we're, he meant you guys, because he was already at 100%. So really what he meant was you guys are getting better and better every week, but he was humble enough to also include himself in that. So I said two biggest words, family and impact, as in that's just what he had on everybody he was around.
And now that I'm all cried out for today, between the funeral and all of this, I'm going to just try to talk a little bit without, breaking down here. So I guess one thing that just kind of has already changed me in the couple days, and I know that years from now, it'll be something I'll always look back on, is Joey and Dan, we were talking about this on the car ride home today. It was like, we did this show so many times, every Monday at 6 we'd be on here, and I enjoyed every second of it. I loved it. But I never looked around and just stopped for a second, stopped talking, stopped thinking about Illini football and sports, and just took a second to just soak it in. I never took that second. I never looked around and just said, wow, thank you for Joey and Dan and Brett and Jeff. I never took that time to, and not that I should have, and I think you guys feel that same way. It's just, you don't appreciate things as much until they're gone. And what the biggest thing I've learned from Brett, or that's going to change me from now on, I guess, is just to appreciate that. Because, man, I would do anything to have him back, just to hear him say those words, all right, boys, let's do a radio show, just to hear that one more time. And so I guess from now on, every second on this show, literally every second, I'll just be able to look over at that chair, that little bungee cord chair that he laid back on all the time, almost hit his head against that wall. I'll just be able to look over there and be thankful that I'm where I am. And I'm going to miss him every single second. But from now on, I'm just going to sit here and soak it in and be thankful. And the other thing, obviously, with Brett is just the drive, the passion. How could it not push you? I know Larry Bird used to say something to the effect of he had to practice all the time because he knew somebody else was getting better. And that means he had to get better. Well, Brett was always getting better. And Brett was one of those guys that if you were interviewing for the same job or whatever, like, well, I'm screwed. I mean, this guy's damn good. I mean, he's good. And he was always working. He was always doing something. And he loved every second of it. He did every second of it with a smile on his face. And it's just an important lesson in life. And this goes way beyond sports journalism, broadcasting, whatever. Find something you love and do it the way Brett would. And the way Brett would do it is full-heartedly, giving everything he's got, and smiling about it the whole time.
I'll just tell you this really quick. I'm going to man this sports mic to the best of my abilities from here on out because, like I said, just that's what you learned from him.
Let's take a quick break here. 7:40. We're going to try to go, I think, till 8 is the plan. So we wouldn't be doing Brett any justice without talking sports. So Torrance Sorrell is here. We're going to talk a little NBA as the season starts tomorrow. And then at 6:50, we'll bring in Jordan Wilson, and we'll do MLB talk. He covered the Kansas City Royals all summer, so what a perfect guy to have on to talk a little World Series with us. This is Illini Drive on Champagne's Alternative, WPGU 107.1.
Rizzo can't do anything besides fall behind 0-2 and account automatically. It's like he goes up and gives a 2-pitch handicap. It's been weird. He's been down 2 strikes
it's like
to start every
softball.
count. Yeah, seriously, though. It's exactly like that.
Back here on Illini Drive, your home on the way home for Illini Sports every Monday at 6. We are doing a special show today in honor of Brett Lerner, and as we mentioned, wouldn't be doing him any good if we didn't talk any sports. So Torrance Sorrell is still in town here from a busy homecoming weekend, and what better guy to have on than to preview his favorite sport, NBA basketball. Even though he's a Dwayne Wade guy, we'll still keep him on. And so I guess, Torrance, heading into this one, what are your overall thoughts here?
It's going to be an amazing season, man. I'm looking forward to it, especially if everyone's healthy. I think that's the number one thing right now. You got the Bulls game tomorrow against the Cavs, the opener. I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, it's good for Chicago fans to finally see Rose actually playing. That's what I was actually looking forward to. With a face mask, that's kind of weird. A little bit of a Rip Hamilton style, but hopefully, they said Noah's actually possibly going to come off the bench now for Mirotic. That's pretty interesting. Noah just been battling a lot with so many injuries over the past few years, and Nico really kind of, proven himself over the years. So it's going to be a pretty interesting season this year. Obviously, you have the defending champs. You have the Warriors coming back. I honestly don't think they're going to. They're going to do damage, but I don't think they're going to win another title this year. Just for me, outside looking in, I feel like OKC is going to have a pretty good chance in the West this year. That's kind of who I'm leaning towards, but. You want to stick in it with Chicago-wise. I think I'm interested to see the progress of Bobby Portis. A lot of people have been saying a lot of good things about him. He's pretty much that hard-nosed player you kind of need on your team. That's kind of a good sight to see. And also McDermott. That guy's heating up in the offseason play, and I think that kind of complements the coaching of Fred Hoiberg, having that offensive mind. He's coming in of a coach as opposed to Thibodeau, more of a defensive mind player, burning Jimmy Butler to about 50 minutes a game, even past 48 minutes, and they already play 48 minutes. So it's kind of good to see some of those younger guys kind of really get in more and just hopefully get more playing time in the season. Why not? So looking forward to it, man.
Torrance, I don't mind you talking Bulls and stuff like that, all for your little opening segment, but how in the world have you not mentioned the name Dwayne Wade?
I'm trying to not be biased on this show right now.
That's fine. But that's one of the guys the best. I wouldn't mind hearing what you got to say about Dwayne Wade and your Heat.
Oh, Miami taking it.
All right, now he's out.
But you want to be honest, I think Miami has a good shot this year if Wade played more than 50 games. I'm getting tired of him being a part-time hourly baller. I want him to actually play.
That's your profession
60.
now, right?
Well, hourly baller.
Yeah, part-time hourly baller.
Yeah, something like that. Just it's weird, but yeah, man. Just hopefully they have a good season this year. Obviously, health is the issue. That was a big blow. They didn't have Chris Bosh last year. They didn't even make the playoffs, which was sad. I got so much flack for that. Whiteside, he's kind of a player I like a lot. The big guy on the team, the man in the middle. He reminds me a lot of Andrew Bynum. For some reason, he has that mindset. But one thing about him, he's kind of a trouble case. He's one of those guys who have a lot of issues, off the court issues, and I think Dwayne Wade's leadership is definitely going to be tested in that aspect this year. But you definitely can't count out the king, man. Can't count out LeBron. Always this year, he's always another beast, and he's always someone you have to get towards if you want to get far in the playoffs, especially in the East this year. But it's going to be a different format this year with the playoffs, so it's going to be interesting to see how everything's going to shape up.
And Torrance, talking about the East, you already touched on the Heat and the Bulls. Obviously, the Cavs are the team to beat.
Yep.
But outside of the Cavs, Bulls, and Heat, who else could you see Milwaukee getting into that mix?
Oh, that's a real up-and-coming team coming. I was going to touch on those guys, and, man, did you see the wingspan of that team? Everyone is about...
Oh, my.
Everyone is super lanky on that team, and that just goes to show just with good coaching, too. I like what Jason Kidd is doing to those young guys, and you have Jabari Parker possibly coming back. That's good, not only for the city, but just him, just being back, and we need those Chicago players to play more. That's kind of always a good thing. Then you have the Greek Freak. That boy is... Man, his wingspan is just crazy, and you just have so many guys with length on their team, but they definitely need experience too. So I think their chemistry is definitely going to be tested this year, and if they go far, man, they could possibly be what OKC was. Remember when it was real young, and over the few years they started to get better. Now they looking like a favorites this year over the West. So I wouldn't doubt them out, but I also like the Wizards too. John Wall is definitely one of my other favorite players besides Dwayne Wade. I love that guy's tenacity on the team. I love what Paul Pierce did with those guys before. Obviously, he departed and went to the Clippers. They also attain to possibly beat him and Bill. Backcourt is nasty. So, you never know. You never could doubt those guys as well. So, you have a lot of teams coming up possibly in the East. So, it may not be that easy for the Cavs this year.
Being a fan of the NBA and also seeing as you're a kid from Chicago, you appreciate a Chicago baller as well, as much as the next one does. But what's your opinion on this whole D Rose thing? And obviously, I mean, if you just look at the eye and the man with the face mask on right now, obviously that what happened was serious. I mean, you can just look at him and see that. But just with the way he's reacted to it and his comments on it, just how, like I said, as a fan of the NBA, have you responded to that? Do you have any opinion on how he handles, his injuries now and, what he says about, his situation publicly?
I definitely don't like what he's saying publicly. I feel like someone else is speaking for him. I feel like almost that's not really him saying those things. You have all those influences behind him, like his brother was saying stuff about possible trades. And, let's be honest. I mean, obviously, in high school and college, people was talking about Rose and other aspects outside of basketball as far as, like, things that come out of his mouth, the way he presents himself. And that's definitely being backflagged in the league now when he's talking now. And it's just everything he says is being used against him. Like that one comment he said about, oh, I just want to, be there for my family. And, we talking about the season. He didn't even play a game yet. And he already talking about getting hurt. He didn't even get hurt yet. So it's just little stuff like that. And, obviously, majority of us is from the Illinois area, if not Chicago. You know how Chicago fans are. We don't like hearing those type of things. So I feel like everything he says will be used against him. And also with those comments with Jimmy Butler, it was kind of, a little bit of rumors saying they didn't like each other on the court, but it wasn't really that much evidence about that. So it's little things like that. But I really feel like this year Rose should definitely keep his mind on the goal and not so much about the media, because that may definitely get you in trouble.
And you mentioned Bobby Portis early on, and I guess I'm just curious. Most people that follow the Bulls weren't that excited when they drafted him, and I'm curious what you've seen early on. Just because there's been good reports of, hey, wait a minute, this guy can play. There wasn't really much before that, but just kind of curious what you've seen so far.
Yeah, I definitely seen someone who definitely has a little bit of an upside in the future. I actually went to a Bulls game a few weeks ago, a preseason game, when they played, I think they played the Pistons, I believe, and obviously they lost that game by a pretty decent margin, but he's definitely a guy with upside. He could shoot a little bit of threes, The games kind of get a little bit of more of a European style now, so you see a lot of guys playing outside of their element a little bit, but he's definitely a guy in the future that you would like to see, produce for the Bulls, especially with guys like Noah getting older with injuries and You have obviously Miritic and Gasol still, but a lot of people aging in the league. So I think that was a pretty solid pickup. A little bit of a sleeper too. So only time to tell now, boys.
Yeah, so I think we're going to have to run to a quick break here. Sorry, we're just checking the phone real quick. Let's take a quick break. Torrance, thanks for jumping on.
No problem.
We're going to shift gears, talk a little baseball. Jordan Wilson in the studio. He covered the Kansas City Royals all summer. So we're going to take a quick, short time out here again. Today's show with Heavy Hearts honoring Brett Lerner. The late, great Brett Lerner passed away last Friday in a car accident, trying to do the best we can to make sure we're doing him justice on this show. We took the first part of the show really, truly honoring what Brett meant to us, and I think we articulated that pretty well. And now, of course, per his request, transitioning into sports. This is Illini Drive on Champaign Alternative, WPGU 107.1. Welcome back into Illini Drive, your home on the way home for Illini Sports every Monday at 6. Want to try that one again? All right, we know what he said. He wanted to jump around, and so we played jump around. Apologies there. The board shot before we needed to go on air here. This is Illini Drive. Joey Gilman alongside Jeff Omer, Dan Collins, Kevin McCarthy. You just heard from Torrance Sorrell talking a little NBA. Jordan Wilson will be in to talk baseball, we promise. But we got a special guest on the line here. He is Spencer Turkin, former host of the Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1, calling in to share some thoughts here. Spencer, how are you?
Boys, what's going on?
How you been, bud?
I'm doing pretty well, but just wanted to call and let you know that all of us former hosts of the Illini Drive, we support you guys, and that we're thinking about you today, and that if there's anything that you guys need, to reach out, all right?
Really appreciate it, Spencer. And all's been good with you. I know we're all kind of dealing with this tough as a family here, but in terms of how you've been progressing here, what's new with you?
No, everything's all right with me, and no need to take time on that. But we just wanted to let you know that we're all thinking about you guys today, and everybody at the DI and at the College of Media, and just if you guys ever need anything, you just let us know. All right?
Thanks, bud. We really appreciate the call. That's Spencer Turkin calling in here, just giving his thoughts on what we're all kind of trying to deal with today, just the passing of Brett Lerner. Just a difficult time for us, and I know Spencer, a champion of this show, really got it on his feet, and we wouldn't all be here without him, and given the opportunity to do what we're doing, and now get to do it to honor a friend and colleague of ours in Brett Lerner. Let's go to Jordan Wilson here. He covered the Kansas City Royals all summer, and guess what? They're in the World Series. So Jordan, the expert on this.
He's a good luck charm.
Yeah, how about that? So for you, what have you seen from this team? How did they get here?
Well, I think one of the things you're seeing with the Royals is that they've not really, a few games here and there, a couple little streaks, but they really haven't slowed down since they picked up late last year. And I think you saw that kind of energy both in Kauffman Stadium all summer long while I was down there. I was down there for about 10 weeks up until the All-Star break, covering the team for MLB.com. And, between the players, between Ned, the fans, all around Kansas City, and I had never been to Kansas City before, but even I could tell that the energy was just so high about this team. Anywhere you went, you saw people wearing Royals hats. And, a lot of people jumped on that last year, but there's a massive following behind that team, and I think that kind of helps fuel these players, and they're positive, too. They would lose 3, 4, 5 games in a row, and they were never down in the dumps. They were always confident, we're going to turn this around. And I think that positivity is what you're seeing in this team, and it's kind of propelled them forward. I knew, watching them early on, I had a good feeling they were going to be deep in the playoffs. I wasn't sure that they were going to make the World Series, but now that they're here, I like their chances.
And very broad question for you here, but Mets, Royals, what matchups are you looking towards, and how do you think these teams stack up?
Well, I think one of the things you really have to watch is how they handle Murphy. I was reading, I believe it was the Royals owner was comparing him to Babe Ruth. He is he's something to contain. But if you look at the Royals pitching, historically they've done well against him, and they're actually making a couple interesting things. I don't know if you guys saw. They're starting with Volquez, and then they're going right to Cueto. mostly for rest for Ventura. But it's going to be an interesting pitching matchup, and I think that one of the other interesting things to keep an eye on is how Cueto does, because everyone quickly remembers, I believe it was he gave up 8 runs in the first 2 innings. It was the one game that they just lost badly. But everyone forgets that Game 5 where he did really, really well against the Astros for the, advance. But, I think that, really how he does and how they handle Murphy will be 2 of the most important parts, because they've always, as long as I've been covering them, always throughout this year, their pitching staff has just been as deep as I've ever seen a pitching staff. They're confident in their relievers to go in there and shut people down. And you just don't see any weekends when it comes to their pitching. So as long as their pitching continues to show that dominance, I don't see anyone except for Murphy really cracking them, especially after they went through what Toronto had.
So who's going to be the man? Is it going to be Moose? Is it going to be Hosmer? Who's going to be the man leading the way here in not October or November ball, actually?
Well, I think that's kind of interesting that you mentioned that, because it could be any of them at any time. It happened various times while I was down there. You could never put your finger on one person to lead them all the way. It was always, whether it was Moose one night, it could be Kane another night. Alex Gordon, you look at him, he came back from that awful injury. I was there for that one. That was brutal right before the All-Star game to see him get that kind of injury. But he's come back and done well. And I think it's just, it could be anybody. There's not really anyone you go, Kendrys Morales. It could be anybody on that roster.
And with this Mets team, obviously you have to talk about the starting pitching, and they're unbelievable. they're only going to probably throw 4 starters. 1 to 4, it's just incredible. The Cubs saw it. All of them throw between 95 and 100, and they do so into the 9th inning. But the Royals can get you 1 to 9 hitters, obviously. So I guess just how do you see those young Met pitchers stacking up against that tough Royals lineup?
Well, I think when I look at this situation, I think the Mets are certainly the underdogs. While as last year the Royals were the underdogs, I think that this year really the Royals are the heavy favorites, because, like you said, they have so many strong bats, but their pitching just is unrelenting. But as far as what I think the Mets need to do in terms of pitching, you just got to catch them. You really just have to find a way to catch them making errors. And the Royals aren't ones to make mistakes often, but you just have to look for them, recognize them, and capitalize on them when they come up.
And covering an MLB team, I can only imagine how many personalities, whether they be strange or strong or goofy personalities, there are in a clubhouse. Who was the goofball? Who was the leader? Who was the guy who was in between? And who was the one you enjoyed covering the most? That can even go all the way down to not even necessarily a player, but somebody who's part of the coaching staff.
Well, one of my favorite people to talk to was Danny Duffy. I remember on one of my first days in the locker room.
Southpaw, correct?
Correct. And he and I sat there and we talked dogs for 20 minutes. My first day on the job, and I was just supposed to be observing the guy that I worked with all summer, Jeffrey Flanagan, the main reporter there at MLB, who is, from what he's told me, working like crazy right now. But Danny Duffy had they all had personality. They were all approachable. From a reporter, media standpoint, there was no person you were like, let's steer clear of him. They were all very approachable. And it's funny you mentioned the leadership. Most of them, it's not really one or two. You see Haas, you see Moose. But any of them can step up at any time. Just look at how many all-stars that they had on that roster. That kind of, goes to the credit of their leadership in addition to their ability to play.
And I want to put World Series talk aside just for 1 second, maybe a minute. Just talk a little bit about your experience as a young journalist. What was that like?
Well, one of the things that I've told people since coming back is when I go to write stories for Peoria, I work for Gatehouse Media covering Illinois sports. One of the things I've noticed is I'm way more relaxed when it comes to writing things, especially on deadline, because the way that MLB worked is if the winning team won, you would finish up your game story and write 2 side stories about the team. And from the moment, if the game ended at 9:24, by 10:24, everything needed to be in. You had 60 minutes to get downstairs, get your interviews, and come back upstairs and pump out all these stories. I remember what they would do other times too is they would, when the away, because Kansas City wasn't a go-to desirable place for some of the beat writers, so when the Red Sox came to town, the guy in Boston didn't want to come, so they switched me over to the Red Sox. And I don't know anything about the Red Sox really at that point, other than that they beat my Cardinals really, really badly about a decade ago in the World Series. Right. And they, so I didn't know anything, but I ended up having to write 17, 18 stories in a span of 3 days on the Red Sox. So they work you. They work you good, and it is a great experience. You will come out of it by the end of that experience knowing if that is exactly what you want to do or not.
That's interesting. Sometimes you got to learn a team by the fly. Google.com, I'm sure, might have been
America's favorite friend.
Yeah, it might have been Jordan's best friend at that time.
Baseball reference, actually.
I'm not much, just really quick, I'm not much of a Vegas guy, but I'm pretty sure the Royals are the favorites to win the World Series. Should that be the case?
Yeah. I think that just from what they have coming in last year, they have all the momentum in their favor. And I think that was the interesting thing about the last 4 teams left is all of them had unique stories. But when you look at this team, I agree with Kevin when he was talking about the pitching for the Mets. That is what they really have going for them. But I think the Royals just have too much going against the Mets at this point.
Jordan, we really appreciate the time. Thanks for jumping on. I know we got to get to a break here because we're almost out of time here, but we wanted to make sure we covered some World Series talks. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's Jordan Wilson. He covered the Kansas City Royals all summer here. Well, not here, in Kansas City, and now gets a chance to give us an insight because they're in the World Series playing for all the marbles. I think that's going to do it for us here. I guess just for me, getting off of what Jordan said about the World Series, at the service today, and again, we're doing this show for Brett Lerner, doing all the shows for him as a reminder just why we're here, what we're doing this for. Brett unfortunately passed away Friday night in a car accident, and so we've been trying to really dedicate and honor this show to him, for him and his family and all his friends. We've heard from numerous amount of people coming in and out of every possible avenue, just calling in and wishing their sympathies and sharing their best memories. The one thing baseball related that was mentioned, the World Series coming up, and so Brett's uncle got up on the stage today and talking about how God had just too many Yankees up there he was sick of. Brett, biggest Yankee fan out there, and they were saying, he has Babe Ruth, but Babe Ruth drinks too much, so God was sick of him. And Lou Gehrig was there, but God never really cared for Lou Gehrig. He was just not his best friend, boring. Yogi Berra passed away, gets up there, but he's just crazy. He's not really the smartest guy in the world. And so his uncle finished it was God needed the best and brightest baseball analyst and Yankee guy, and none other than Brett Lerner could do that justice. And so while we're all having a tough time doing this show, getting through this as a family here, that was the one bright spot for me, and almost what his uncle called it, kind of the why. Why was Brett taken from us? And so it was just kind of a little anecdote that, of course, is fitting because Brett is Mr. Sports journalist, and able to bring that whole connection together here in one of the tougher times, at least we've had as a Illini media family here. And anything, yeah.
All right, boys. Next week, let's do a radio show for Brett.
Yeah, so that's going to do it for us here. Again, our hearts are with the Lerner family and the Pomerantz family during this tough time. Anyone needs to reach us for any more information on things, we have that, and we can send it out. Funeral was today. The family will be holding condolence calls throughout the night tonight if you're in that area until 9, as well as on Tuesday evening from 6 to 9. And address details we can send out to you. You can reach out to us at Illini Drive at DI_sports. That's going to do it for us here. Joey Gelman alongside Jeff Omer, Dan Collins, Kevin McCarthy. Our thanks to Sam Sherman for calling in. The real TS4, Torrance Sorrell, for sticking around, talking some basketball with us. Jordan Wilson, Spencer Turkin, former host here, sharing his thoughts. UPTV, they're here as always. They'll re-air this one on Wednesday at 9 p.m. And our thanks to Brett. Without him, our show would be nothing. And so we're going to miss you, bud. And we know you're listening, watching, wherever you are. And all these shows, we're doing them for you from here on out. This has been Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1.